lot of political rhetoric was uttered, and the media was in the middle of all this and responsible to give some perspective to you, the audience. And there was some criticism that across the board, the media couldn't report on issues, some issues. For instance, the unpaid allowances for Jubilee delegates. And well, I did some finding out on whether or not this was done by some media houses, and it was. I think if we go by Leila Mohammed's report up next.
Despite the chilly weather, everyone was upbeat about the events of the day. From as early as 7 a.m., delegates lined up to take their place and participate in making history. But at the VIP entrance, trouble was brewing. Former URP chairman Barry Shil was having a hard time calming down an unruly crowd. When tempers could not calm down in the cold weather, Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen tried to use his charm, which worked for a minute before the delegates decided to take their battle inside the gymnasium. The bone of contention, a 10,000 shilling allowance, which they claimed they had been promised for each delegate on daily basis for the 3-day event.
Kila mmoja wetu alitakikana kuwa facilitated kila siku na transport na accommodation ya shilingi 3,000. Kwa siku tatu kila mmoja alifaa kupata 9,000. Ukifanya hesabu ya delegates wote wenye walikuwa wanakuja, ilifaa tutumie milioni 90 kulipa nyinyi wote. Na nataka niseme hivi, na jamani tusikizane kwa sababu sisi wote ni viongozi.
Despite this assurance, the delegates carried on with their push for allowances, changing the Jubilee clarion call of Tunaweza.
Sasa leo tuko na slogan mpya. Kwa sababu Wakenya wote wanataka nini? Na serikali ya Jubilee itakisha kila Mkenya amepata nafasi ya kupata nini? Jubilee! Basi.
And money was not the only source of friction. There was also a scramble for party t-shirts, each delegate trying to get memorabilia to take back home. As the delegates regrouped to re-strategize, it was left to the entertainers to put the crowd at ease. And as gospel musician Mani Ngwe found out, it's not easy to sell your ideology to a crowd in need of money. It took the deputy president and his oratory skills to save the day. Promised the Jubilee leaders were men of their word.
Nimeambiwa ya kwamba kuna mambo madogo madogo hapa. Tunaelewana? Na mimi nataka niwaeleze hivi. Nikisimama hapa kwa niaba ya kiongozi wetu Mheshimiwa Rais, mambo haya madogo madogo yatatatuliwa leo.
It was termed as mambo madogo madogo, but if you ask some of the delegates who probably still feel haven't been paid or felt treated wrongly, they would say it was a big deal. And well, it became a big deal in many stories that were covered and aired and even written. I don't know if, I'd start with Kunjiri, if this was blown out of proportion.
I don't think it was blown out of proportion. I think the media was accurate, because that was happening. And what I find interesting is that, so the event, that particular incident happened and it got solved. Because if it had not been solved, Saturday, which is when the president went to Kasarani, it would have been very messy. I mean, it would have been, these guys would have been telling the president, Pesa. So for the fact that he was able to have the same number of delegates in Kasarani and they listened to him and they went home okay without anybody causing problems, means that the problem was solved. So there was, I wouldn't blame the media for covering that. Of course, there were a few who hyped it a bit more than they should have, but hey,
more than should
comes with the territory.
Well, okay.
That's the problem. There's actually no threshold. Right. You can decide to spend your entire coverage of that event, which was a 3-day event, and the only thing you're going to cover is that.
Right.
I mean, nobody's going to tell you that you have been unfair. And that usually tends to be the problem of a lack of threshold, of how do you actually balance your story.
But balance to whose expectation? I don't know. There was the unpaid issues. Then there was also ODM. The balance of it generally.
At the Media Council had a different look. it gave us serious points to ponder as we look at 2017. Is the media prepared to cover elections?
Okay.
That's a major issue that we are looking at ourselves and asking, are we prepared enough? Are we doing enough? Just having looked at the two events and how they were covered. And seriously, we need to relook. The media must relook at how they are looking at elections. Obviously, the money issues were money issues, but those were color stories. I mean, we would call them, they were nice, they were interesting. We know people have not been paid up to today.
Yeah.
But what the
What do you mean? How do you know that?
I mean, people have reported, and even today's newspapers are here. You could see there are delegates who came here to give interviews in various media houses who have not
Well,
been
when
paid.
you have 10,000 people, you're suddenly going to have a couple of people who are going to have a problem. But I think, if, again, balance.
So you're confirming that?
Again,
Yeah,
no, you see, I
it
don't
happened.
know that people are not,
But to us-
for sure, you're going to have 10,000 people. You're going to have in every, that's a society, an entire society by itself. You're going to have a couple of people, one or two. But then again, if you choose to focus on those ones, remember, these are 10,000 people who got, most of them got paid.
Which
but you're
took a
talking
lot
about-
of time to plan for. And at some stage, even the deputy president said, sisi ni serikali, sisi si party tu peke yake. So if it can take government 10,000 to deal, then 42 million becomes a problem. But anyway, our concern was not that.
That is
That was a light note. That was a light note. Our concern was principally looking at how we covered the two events.
On a scale of 10, how did we?
I mean, at the council, looking at what we did a quick content analysis of how media was covering the various events.
And this was from Wednesday?
Yes,
Wednesday,
yes,
Thursday,
yes,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, we gave it 6 out of 10, and for obvious reasons. That one, we need
That's not
serious,
bad.
we need serious organization at media level. We need media houses to start election desks that will be manned by experienced people and with journalists who would then, because if you look at, for example, the first day it was 40 leaders from CORD to defect. The number was 40. Then if you go to the breakdown of the various parties, you don't see that 40. Then the second day it was 35 leaders from CORD to defect. Then again, you count them, it was not. The last day, it was now 27.
It was 27.
So those figures, I mean, obviously gave us a feedback as journalists. Are we reading and doing, checking and verifying some of the basic information? When the even allocation, when you say Honorable Timami is a CORD governor, yet everybody knew UDF was not in CORD. That obviously is a problem to us. I mean, not just the party, but how keen are we journalists following, and are we conversant with issues that we are reporting on? So that was a major thing that we must take back as journalists, and obviously the issues. What were the issues, like you are saying? When you look at both the CORD and ODM coverage, what are the issues? What agenda was the media helping into Kenyans follow? Is it health, is it education, is it infrastructure, or are we just stuck in the money delegate issue? So that we are saying ODM at 10. We are looking back and say, what have they done? What haven't they done? Are they a critical opposition that are giving critical, opposition to the various? Do they have a shadow cabinet, for example, that is helping them criticize? If we are looking at JAP, what are we looking at? What is it that they have not done that now they will do in terms of their promises? What is missing from? So we expected such analysis from media so that they help Kenyans understand and start interacting with the parties based on the issues they are raising, not necessarily because of the T-shirts and the rest.
Dorothy,
so that was the concern.
We have a 6 out of 10 from the Media Council. As a political commentator, you were following this keenly, definitely. What was your view generally, first of all?
My view is that the media tried its best to cover, although some facts were missing, and some facts were not checked.
All right.
Like Victor is saying that we had some media houses saying that this number of MPs from, or politicians from ODM were going to defect.
Yes.
And then we saw the numbers just going down and down and down to 27. It's because the various media houses got the information from different sources.
Third hand and all that.
Yeah. Let's say they got from ODM, they got from Jubilee, and some were exaggerated because of the obvious reasons that we have hit the opposition and we are going with this large number. But we saw that it was not the truth. We had 27 in Kasarani defecting MPs, and also the media did not come out to tell us about what the law is saying about defection. For those parties that folded up, it is legal for them to to do what they did. But there are politicians who are saying now they are in Jubilee, but they have not folded up their parties.
They haven't written
Yeah.
officially.
So what does the law say about that? Is it legal for them to just cross like that?
Well, actually, there was a piece last night, at least for NTV. I'm not just saying that we did the best job in it, but Kennedy Mureithi did a piece about
That should have
asking
happened.
those questions.
That should have happened during the launch.
So,
of
on a scale
Jubilee.
of 10, I just want to get across the table
Yeah.
just to understand. On a scale of 10,
I'll go with Victor.
you can go with
A
6.
6.
All right. Henry didn't seem to believe you that much when you said we did quite well in the coverage. Henry, your view generally, first of all.
I'll start by giving a 4 and then justify, because when I listen to Victor and Dorothy, I think that they are clear in their mind that the work done wasn't good, and therefore their mark is ambivalent to their reasoning. And
Basing it from where we did it the other time, so they have improved a bit.
yes,
Yeah.
I would
I
say
think so.
that the challenge was twofold. One, I ended up, because I wasn't around during the 3 days, I tried to see coverage from whatever footage that is now archived.
Yes.
And the challenge was sources of information, that we had singular sources of information for Jubilee and singular sources of information from ODM. So whatever narrative each of these entities wanted to pass to Kenyans was passed to us through the media without question. And that's the easiest thing you would see, that even though Leila Mohammed, for instance, covered the money issue, we never talked to a delegate that didn't have the money. We left the 3 leaders to give the voice. So you would see Murkomen, see Sakaja, and see the deputy president explaining how they've dealt with the problem. And at the tail end, you still have a challenge, because then you're not getting other voices on this issue. What are people saying? Has it totally been resolved? What were you really promised? Was this supposed to be 10,000 bob per day? Was it supposed to be 3,000? And who promised you in the first place?
Yes.
Because then who was the person bringing you? Because now you're talking about a big entity, but each of these delegates were brought in by a certain group of people. So in the end, there are people we've sanitized, because we've not managed to have this question go to them, because they were entities that brought delegates. So that's one reason as to why I say sources of information. We acted as just conveyor belts for what parties wanted. And we could have questioned more, given the notification that this event was going to happen. We had more lead time in terms of preparation. You could reverse that and say, why didn't we just cover these activities as advertisement?
Purely it was paid up.
But it was paid for.
And if it was paid up, then just mark that as paid up and say, once we've run the advertorials, here is the editorial.
It was not marked up.
So that it is very different, that this is what the parties wanted to say, but this is what we've gleaned from our coverage of it. 3, that I sat back and asked myself a few questions and said, what are the issues, apart from the insults that were veiled in both platforms, in Kasarani and in Mombasa?
The Mombasans are not veiled. But
Yeah, because I don't speak for anyone, and
Yes.
Gunjiri Shifts
no, actually, no,
has
really.
spoken
I mean,
for both.
I can explain what I mean.
But
by that,
by the insult.
by the fact that the Mombasans are not veiled.
So I'm clear in my mind that both of these platforms did not, to the detail that was expected, canvass what are the issues. I sat back and told myself, as a young boy growing up and knowing that KANU used to have a delegates meeting in Nairobi, delegates who had been elected, at least from the ground
Yes.
upwards. I asked myself, where is this question on how delegates have been elected? And who has talked about it? This is the party that is supposed to represent all of us, as it was portrayed, without a single thing on how people were picked. So if it is the one that is going to entrench democracy, this is the biggest story that the media houses missed. That We were talking about a party that is going to entrench democracy, having done everything else that has nothing to do with democracy. Handpicking people from across the country, having those parties, some of them folding before they do one single election. So you had national parties folding up before they do a single election, but their leaders, who are interim leaders at the point of registration, when they were given the interim registration, they said it's interim. Then they were given the final registration with a confirmation that they will carry on elections. We've wound them up without an election, and the media didn't say anything. So for me, that's how I arrive at my number 4, that this was a case of democracy. The media was supposed to help us play that. I shift back to CORD. The minimization, for instance, in Mombasa, of defectors, as if they didn't earn any single vote when they were elected. It is not realistic. You know, when we have one leader just saying, it doesn't matter those who have defected. You see, it's a challenge. I sat back and asked myself, looking at Charles Nyachai, entitled to his decision and everything, on the first row, which party did he belong to that was folding? Yeah, that was folding. Which party did he belong to that was folding? Where is that story? That does it mean we appointed Charles Nyachai to be the CIC chairperson when he was a party leader, a registered party? That would have been unconstitutional.
Right.
So when did he join this party that has folded? Those are stories we missed. And it is for that reason that I say, with proper reflection, we could have had more stories. We could have interviewed Nyachai. You see that? Now I'm talking this about
the media had carried that story on him when he tried to fold for the people in Kisii and he was chased away.
Yes, so he is cutting. You know, so for me that's the thinking. And it's not like we can't do a better job if you get a 4. I know that this is a dry run. You know, it's a pretest for the
dry
real
run
coverage.
that shows that we are not ready according to
One of the
Esther.
things
But let Wambugu just respond to something he had said
Yes.
in response to Henry.
2 things. First and foremost, I think there was a certain element of, in fact, the only thing I agree, or the primary thing I agree with all of you is that the media became broadcasters of information that was coming from the various political parties without verification. And the very, very simple example of this is that ODM said they were going to launch 47 buses and 823 cars. That was covered by media. Then they launched 1 bus. Nobody ever went to ask, you guys told us you're launching 47 buses. Where are the other buses?
Actually, Peter Mwangangi did ask, and he was told that they had already left.
They're going to the counties to pick people.
Really?
No, they are left for the county.
Yes, he was.
hope to see
And
them in
nobody
some
saw them
packets.
anywhere else.
Right.
You see, the question would be, nobody saw them anywhere else. We only saw 1 bus. Nobody saw any other bus of ODM anywhere. So even if you're told, again, broadcasting. So he was told they've gone to the counties, and he reported that. He never confirmed that, yes, actually, I saw a bus in Kakamega, or yes, actually, I saw a bus in Nyeri, or yes, actually, I saw a bus in...
The issue here being that it's not the buses or
It's not the buses.
verification.
It's not the buses. It's the fact that media was running with the stories that they were told by the party.
Without verifying.
They were not verifying that this is actually true. So if I stood here and I said, I am a delegate of JP and I have not been paid, I would be covered as a delegate of JP who has not been paid. Nobody would find out, are you really a delegate? Because, and then also there was something that media completely missed, that JP's delegates were actually delegates that came from other parties. So that what you had on Thursday were delegates, what you had on Friday were delegates of the previous day. So when, for example, URP folded and merged, the URP delegates became JP delegates the next day. So nobody actually did a story on that one. So when we were out here talking about delegates complaining they haven't been paid, nobody was following that. So you guys are which delegates of which particular party?
Exactly.
Because remember they came to Nairobi separately. Every party brought its delegates. They met. I mean, theoretically, these delegates could have refused to fold. Theoretically. They could have met on Thursday in whichever places were meeting and refused to fold. So nobody did that story either. So, but they met, they folded. The next day they went to JP and became JP delegates. Nobody actually followed. So how did that transition happen? How did, what does it mean? So were you paid by URP on the first day and JP the second day? That's the whole story going on there. So when you're talking about Hatujalipwa, who are you demanding your money from? Are you asking for your money from JP? Are you asking for your money from GNU or from URP or TNA? Who really, that is a story that was not told.
But then again, this is all about the verification issue.
Yeah,
So
it's
the
about
lack of
verification.
the fact that
Yeah.
all through, and then when I talked about the fact that the Mombasa ones were unveiled, first and foremost, there was a very interesting, I mean, and I don't want to say it was a deliberate effort by the media, not to question how did ODM wake up and decide they're going to have a birthday party on the day that Jubilee was launching. Let me explain that.
I'd say in my defense, at least, we were here with one of the officials, and
Yes.
he said we had been planning this for.
But you never heard
well,
about it
but
until the week.
Yes, the
that-
week
see,
that
again,
you were going to.
Again,
plan.
the lack.
Of what importance would this have been to the
You see,
greater story?
what was happening is that, in my opinion, the media was being used to balance the counter narrative that was going to happen on that Saturday. So, first, is it actually accurate to say that 10th of October is the 10th anniversary of ODM? Because this assumes it was formed 10 years ago on 10th of October. That's the first thing.
Yes.
So it would be interesting to know.
But they'd
then-
already held a dinner in
And they had
celebration
given
of the
out
10th.
Yeah.
a schedule of activities of that event,
Yes.
not that justifies how they got to that event. Because when you're celebrating a birthday, I had a 9th birthday, I had an 8th birthday, I had a 7th birthday. If I've never celebrated another birthday before, but then the day I wake up and decide to celebrate the 10th one is because my main rival is launching, media should be
So
asking.
are you
But then
saying, are you saying
You could be like Henry. I don't celebrate any unless
Should
they
we
are
blame
big
media?
years.
But you see, what I'm saying is this. the question where I'm trying to lead us is here.
Yes.
We have seen, for example, a couple of years ago when Jubilee were forming, Uhuru and Ruto were coming together in Nakuru. ODM held a rally in Tononoka. Nobody actually showed that connection. What happened during that day was that Jubilee was having this major event that was really a turning point in their coalition in Nakuru. ODM went and held a rally in Tononoka that ended up splitting the screens, so that you're having a split screen. That is like 3 years ago. Again, it happened this Saturday. Nobody actually showed that
should we hold
connection.
the
But let me
media
finish. Let me
accountable for
finish.
The
Let
media
me
is
finish.
not responsible for
No,
that.
let me finish. Because it's accuracy. You want to show the trend.
Yes.
But then there's also the issue of ODM argued that they were going to have a major announcement on that day.
And people asked them.
And
the major
the day
one was
ended.
that
And
was
then
asked.
the media would have been like, okay, you guys had said you're going to do a major announcement. We did not see that. Finally,
They answered.
how do you hold a birthday party and your best friends don't show up?
It doesn't matter. Your birthday
I mean,
is your
again,
birthday.
media
the
cannot
question,
determine
you're
the
a
business.
coalition.
Doesn't matter.
You know, you're a coalition. Remember, for us to actually have a frank and honest conversation where you're not taking sides as media.
Where was
the-
Gilu? Where was Mudavadi?
But you see,
where
that's what
was
I'm saying.
Moi
I'm not
in
saying you
Jubilee?
should. I'm not saying you shouldn't have
They were
asked.
not-
You
the
see,
media
again,
asked.
now guys are taking.
No, the
people
media
are being
asked.
defensive here.
The media
Remember,
asked,
I
and
am
they
not
were told
saying.
this is an ODM
No,
event.
I'm
Media
not saying.
asked.
I'm not saying that you should not have, because you didn't ask ODM. You can't balance by saying you
media
didn't ask
asked
JP.
them.
You should have asked everyone.
The
You
media
should have
asked
asked
them.
JP. Where is Ngilu? Where is Moi? You should have asked ODM.
Actually,
That's
but-
again.
but-
share with
but-
you the
but-
clips. Media asked.
The clips are there.
are there. We can show you
That
the
was-
media
To
asked
what
those
to what
questions.
end would you
See,
would you
what-
have
what would
the
happen
media
is,
ask that question?
is to show the genuineness of each event.
or
Would you
when
Because
rather-
my problem is,
Yes, Dorothy,
My
ask.
problem is,
Would you rather the media not cover ODM?
no. That's what I'm saying.
Because
but you
it was
also
Jubilee's
need,
day.
no. You also
Now,
need to be able to explain. You
Jubilee
also
should
need
have
to be
been
able to
covered.
show. Because for me, in my opinion, and I made this joke to somebody earlier. What we actually saw is a situation where I'm getting married.
Yeah.
So I'm getting married. I've had this spouse for a long time. We have planned.
Sent out
then
invitations.
sent out invitations. Everybody knows I'm getting married. Then the week I'm about to get married,
Your friends
an
vanish.
ex of mine who's upset
Yeah.
decides even now she's going to get married on the same day.
And the media
Just
can't
so
ignore.
that,
Media can't
you
ignore.
make sure that you don't have
Media couldn't
all the
ignore.
attention on one person. And somebody needed to raise that up. Really, did you
Yeah, but
actually need to have
the
this
media,
event
if the
as
media were to
ODM?
end up, if the media, in all sincerity, were to end up
Asking people why they do it.
feeling that one party or one grouping is entitled to hog
whole
the
Yeah,
country,
the
then
media.
for sure that is the beginning of us not being a democracy.
Exactly.
That we need to be able to understand, in all fairness. In fact, that's why I asked the question if these were advertorials, because then the discussion would have been different. But for purposes of coverage, the news media would make decisions on the purpose on the news value basis. And if one event, because they have footage, turned out that it didn't have as much in terms of news value, you can even as well decide to have it as a small footnote
yes.
on the other.
And I hope-
And that is a professional decision you
That
ought
would
to
be a
make.
very professional decision.
I hope Martha Karua had something, Madam had something that day, so that then we have so many of those
It was a
events.
day for everyone.
I mean,
They
so that
did,
we
but
cover
they've not been covered at all.
They were not covered. How we have covered those with everybody, so that's live.
And let's get to the discussion on fairness, because there was that issue that was raised and why we dwelt with Jubilee and gave just a section of the coverage to ODM. And to be honest, as he had asked, was this an advertiser's kind of function? And yes, it had been paid for most part of the day. But are there rules in terms of national interest? Because someone would say the ODM function is as important to many as the Jubilee function was. Are there rules that guide this?
Thanks, Mark. One, media, Kenya, we don't have a media policy.
Okay.
And Henry can confirm, we don't have a media policy that would guide. So some of these things we do them by routine, by how they come. So that's a major issue that we must address. While the Political Parties Act or the CAA has rules on political advertisement and how you should give people equal, this was purely paid up content. And most of it was paid up content. And once Jubilee had paid up for most of the content, then so the only analysis then comes at the editorial content, how much did the media give ODM versus Jubilee. But at a paid up content, you can't limit somebody how much he can pay for if he has the money. So that becomes, but I know within the rules, if for fairness, there is rules to guide political advertisement. Largely it had to do with KBC because it's a state broadcaster. Now, these are private companies. How do you determine and when this is their source of income? I know CAK has released rules on political advertisements and bulk SMSs and such of kind of a thing. So there are some rules but they don't determine the amount. They only determine the content of it. So to that extent, then we became concerned. In Kenya, we don't have the mass-carry obligation where you can force stations to do. In other countries, there are laws that because of national interest, by law, you are supposed to balance and do particular things, not because of profit motive, but because of national interest. But in a country like Kenya, where we don't have a media policy, we don't know which media system we pursue. We are just there where you have one person who owns 10 radio stations, 5 TV stations, newspapers, in the same geographical location. It becomes a challenge. Yes. So those are some of the things that we are looking at from the industry to engage and see the government get a media policy that then will help us determine who owns what in what level, and then it would also help in terms of some of those things. As it is today, there's no law that guides that, so anything can do. But I know most of the media houses, established 1, 2, 3 of them, have their own internal guidelines that will help them minimize the rule of 60 to 40, how much advertisement. But it's a challenge because when companies are declaring, whatever losses, media houses are closing down. If Jubilee comes and gives them millions, why would they refuse? So it was a bit of a challenge.
Dorothy, in your experience, you've been through many elections and the coverage of the same. And you heard what the Deputy President said earlier when it was an issue of delegates, when he was easing them up and saying, hey, don't worry, we're not just a party, we're the government. So we're running up to the elections, and the Jubilee Party, what represents, of course, the government, is going to be funding a lot in terms of advertisements moving into 2017. Then you have CORD, and you have the other parties and even independents. Then is it realistic to say that we will be objective in our coverage of these different political players?
The media will do its job or advertise for their clients. Let's say Jubilee paid up some for
Jubilee are not
coverage.
quite our clients. We can't say that. But yes, you go ahead with your point.
Yeah, if Jubilee pays up for an advert for Nation or KTN to give them coverage, then I think the media will not have that space to bulldoze their way and say we are going to give our coverage to somebody else who has not paid for them. So if Jubilee has paid for the whole day, maybe when they're having a function or an event for election, it is the media has the right to advertise for them.
It's true. I mean, that's a form of revenue. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here And I don't know if Henry will help us to get to that point, and also Victor.
Something small.
Okay, something small.
Because the worry is we have 3 families, for example, I mean 3 companies that
the
almost
media.
within themselves own 36 radio stations, 14, 13, and 9 in that. And their political inclination is known. Now, if we are going to miss some guidelines or some order in the way if the 30-something radio station decide to run much sped up content and they decide to bombard every Kenyan with those adverts for the next 3 months, how will the Kenyans be able to make a determination of which party to vote for based on? So that's a concern to us even at the media industry, and we have raised this with media owners. If that is 3 families have 36 radio stations, and most of them vernacular radio stations, and they decide to use their money, like he's saying, to run adverts the whole day without any guidelines, what happens?
Right. And Henry, so in that view, would you think strategically 1 or 2 political bullies or giants would then get their way in terms of the narrative because of...
They would, and for me that's the big lesson drawn from this. I began by saying I've tried to look at the footage because I wasn't around, and I've ideally asked a serious content analysis on the broadcasts on those 3 days and who they went to, so that I'm able to engage with this discussion from a point of knowledge. But the quick thing that we ought to come up with is a state advertising policy, which one will differentiate government from political parties.
Right.
Because given the deputy president's assertion, sisi ni serikali, then you do not know when is the government the one instructing and when is it the political party.
Yes.
But 2, for political parties, the dormant regulation in the Elections Act about equitable broadcasting spaces, the media houses are expected to have what they call equal card rates for all political parties, and that where they think that one party has content that is crossing into being majority, 50+1, they have a duty to stagger that content and ask if the other parties are willing to pay for similar content. Otherwise, then we fall into a situation where ours is a totally unregulated private media that does not care about anything public interest.
Okay.
So that discussion is still ought to be there. And I think we've gone through the other policy challenges. Victor has ably pointed out best country with a blossoming media industry without a media policy. You know, this is the irony of Kenya, that very promising, but no policy. But 2, that policy would even have helped to understand what percentage can go to which media house for purposes of ensuring fairness. That to ensure fairness, it has a different way to look at it. That Mark Masai and Nation Media Group may be willing to be fair. But if ODM or Jubilee Party fund 80% of your external revenues, then your fairness begins to waver. Because otherwise, when they threaten to pull out, that next day you will run their content only to hold them back.
Yes.
So that kind of an advert would begin to say that a certain proportion would be given to other entities, you know, however small they may be.
The independents and all.
The independents and others will get this share. And that also keeps you in check. That if you just carried the content without curating it, you know, without giving it a journalistic perspective, the others will. And therefore people will begin to see that bias. So it's still an area we need to, and on this I have discussed with IEBC. Most people, when IEBC came up with the capping, the campaign financing caps, most people saw it as a bad thing. I'm one of the people who said, yes, it's a good start, but it needs to be broken down in more things. Yes. And in one of my write-up, I pointed out advertising
More of the money
and how you're going to
advertising.
regulate advertising. Here, it is an opportunity now for Media Council of Kenya, for Communications Authority of Kenya, for the Ministry of ICT to show some leadership by promulgating a quick policy. The policy is not supposed to inhibit parties to advertise, but it's just supposed to ensure that there is a level playing field and that media houses will not be mistreated if they had a different level of content.
Gonjeri, the reason I'm dwelling on this is it played out even over the weekend.
Yeah.
There were questions over the sources of the money that was funding this Jubilee party launch, and also some were asking now what's funding the ODM birthday party, and you could see how it played out in terms of organization, the optics. You know, there was a lot of money that went into Jubilee party. There's a reason why people are asking. It's not necessarily the answer that the friends of ODM are less or are not as rich as the friends of Jubilee, because the explanation was we have well-wishers, and those are the ones who were paying and helping this particular launch. Was that a legitimate pursued question?
I think the biggest concern was the misinterpretation of the comments that sisi ndio serikali, because those comments were made by the deputy president, were made by a couple of other leaders who are trying to get the people to keep quiet. And I also at some point had gotten concerned, and I was like, okay, so what exactly is the message that's going out? And so somebody explained to me, said, look, what we are saying is that we're not going to lie to you. We're government. We're not going anywhere.
We're not going to lie to you. We're government.
We're
I
government.
know many people would disagree.
Of course,
with that.
I'm sure. But you see, for me, it was a good answer, because you see, as much as whether it was spin or it was real, whatever, what this person said, look, when we said we're government, what we're telling our people is that we're government. We're not going anywhere. When we tell you we're going to pay you, we're going to pay you. We're not some briefcase guys who are going to fold up and leave. But then there's something else I think where, as I listened to this theoretical conversation that was going on here, Kenya is a capitalist state. The reason we have such an aggressive media is because a lot of them are private media. And the thing about private media is that it's a private business. I know I've been in fact on this stage a couple of times and said, look, the problem about our media is that they are private entities. They are driven by profit. So you cannot come and tell me I'm not going to run a certain advert because of public interest, and then I'm going to shut down and send 100 people, 200 people home because we couldn't make any money. So that's the first thing. We need to appreciate the fact that our media is primarily private.
Yes.
And for that as much as we would want them to be run by public interest, that the bottom line is that they're not going to stay afloat because of public interest. Let me finish.
So can
Let me finish.
run an advert of people cutting each other?
You see, no.
National
Because the issue here is this: we have a law, we have a constitution that defines what it is that you can do and what you cannot do.
Yeah.
We have the Cohesion Commission that says what you can say and what you cannot say. In fact, I'm a bit disappointed because of the Mombasa rally, because there was a lot of incitement in part of the speeches that were made, especially by Governor Joho. I would have loved to hear somebody try and qualify them. But then, but apart from that, when you're talking about the issue of who pays for what, that's the first thing. The second thing is, politics is an expensive business anywhere in the world. Now, a lot of the way the reason that some parties close down and the reason that some parties exist has a lot to do with how much funding are you actually able to attract. And this attraction of funds come from several places. Remember, we have a law that says if you get 5% of the vote, you get a share of public resources. So I kept hearing people saying, hiyo ni pesa, hapo kuna pesa ya serikali. And I was like, yes, hapo kuna pesa ya serikali. Because we actually give them money as political parties to do politics. So yes, in that rally, in those organizations, by both ODM and Jubilee, there was public money. My hope is that the Auditor General is going to come and tell us how that money was spent. But then in addition to that, part of how political parties work is that when you look like you have the capacity to run government, you're going to have a lot more well-wishers than when you're in the opposition. So when you have a situation where people are saying, oh no, these guys Jubilee had a lot more money, it's a natural process anywhere in the world. And that's why people fight to get into government. Because once you get into government, you have a lot more friends than when you're in the opposition. So it's going to be easier to attract funds, and it's just a fact.
Victor, and then I'll ask Rose about
I wish
ideology.
to also help in understanding Bwana Mbugu, in the sense that yes, that's part of the reason we are missing it in this country when you talk of a lack of a media policy, because national frequencies are owned on behalf of Kenyans. They are not, much as it's a private business, you applied and you are given a license, but these are they are national resources like oil, like what. So what happens? Most of the people who apply to be given license to operate these stations will go to their apply, they are given. They are never taught to start looking at the bigger picture, that this thing, yes, is a private business, but they are run on behalf. In fact, what the law says that every year every radio station, TV station must be making returns to CAK to check if they have been doing national interest things, including public interest. And if you have not met, you are supposed to be, the license is supposed to be withdrawn from you. So yes, it's a private business, but there are minimums where we say, yes, it's a minimum, but there are some things you must do on behalf of the public, because frequencies are run on behalf. It's actually in part of our law. But most of, you talk to many of the radio station managers, and Akwambia too, this thing was brought to me. Some guys do not even know who registered the radio station, what it is, because most of the people who are applying for the licenses are businessmen.
That's why a party cannot be licensed
to
run a radio station.
A radio station, because
a trade union.
That was a problem, because they would then. So we need again to do that. Media owners and the rest of us, you need to help media owners to understand that radio stations and TV stations are not run purely as business. You have some national obligation, because you are running this thing on behalf of, and it's part of our law.
Right.
Two, the other thing, remember what happened in Tanzania, for example, and some of these things are difficult, and Henry were in Tanzania, where yes, the political parties, the Campaign Act says all political parties must be given equal chances to appear on TV and blah. And these guys will give you time, yes. But they will give government largely between 7 and something. Then the opposition will put at 2 a.m. in the morning. And say, so yes, you have been given time, but what time, who is listening to you? Yes. So those are challenges that we need to, as Henry is saying, to start discussing. Because at the end of the day, we want to serve Kenyan. Or even as a politician, we want to be listened, because you never know who will stand against you. He might be richer than you in terms of money, but in terms of ideas. So if you are going to be blocked simply because you do not have money to match the other person, that's unfair. Yeah. So that's why we are saying we need some minimums, so that even people with the money, but they must also give, media houses must not move purely to be business entities that whoever has so much money then runs everything.
Right. Dorothy, now let's get to the issue of ideologies, because we're running out of time. There was an interesting piece that you did for the Star some time back, and you described the relationship of convenience between Uhuru and Ruto. And there's that question of, has this changed? Now has the politics changed? Of course, right now they're not facing ICC as they were then. Refresh our memory on that particular perspective that you gave, and whether you think the ideologies have come out.
We all know that when in 2012, when Uhuru and Ruto came together, they came together because of the ICC, first and foremost. And secondly, they came together because of their communities. These two communities that represented by the president and the deputy president, they have been in loggerheads for some time because of politics and historical injustices that have really painted a lot of broken relationship that come in, and during elections, you see people fighting.
Yes.
We have seen 2007.
But now, as you've watched the Jubilee Party come together, and it's folded many other parties under it, to say that they're now representing the nation, all the tribes, are you convinced?
That's a hard question, because the parties that have come in now to join Jubilee, so that we have the face of Kenya. We see parties like Tip Tip. We see it has one MCA in Isiolo, I think. We see another party, UDF. I think it has a number of elected politicians, especially in the county assemblies. I think Jubilee has done the right thing, but I don't think they are really going to show the face of Kenya in that, because these parties, most of them are also from Central. The parties that came together are from Central, and a sprinkle of other parties.
So you're not convinced?
I'm not convinced that they need to do more to bring all Kenyans together. But also this idea of breaking parties to form one party that shows the face of Kenya. I think it is it's in contradiction with the nascent democracy that is in Kenya now.
Right.
You remember in 1992, in the 1990s, Kenyans fought for the repeal of Section 2 of the Constitution. And Moi gave in and repealed Section 2 for multipartyism. But now if we do like this, I think we'll be going back
Retrogressive.
to the one-party system.
All right, let me ask Gunjiri, are you convinced, when people talk about, these political parties are all vehicles of, just getting into government and nothing more? All this hula baloo you're giving us, and nice speeches. I think the president gave a 37-minute piece there, and it's even online, that it's all good on paper, but this is all about political survival.
I think fundamentally a lot of the political parties in our country are about getting into power. And one of the things you're even taught in political school is that political establishments are about acquiring and exercising power.
And that's what it's about.
So that's a basic. I mean, we can't run away from that. But I think one of the things that was quite fundamental about this event by JP was that the president didn't need to do what he did. In fact, it actually made him, it just makes it harder for him to run. This is not the kind of structure.
How so?
Remember 2007 when Kibaki was running for re-election? That the easiest way to win an election is to have as many parties as possible out there, all mopping up votes for you and bringing them into one basket for you. That's the easiest way to run for president. In fact, I was one of the people who wrote an article saying, I think for purposes of winning 2017 elections, this whole idea of merging parties and stopping party hopping actually makes your work harder. So for me, that's what made me take notice, because he did not have to do this. Remember, first he's already president, so he's defending his seat. So he's going to be looking for anybody who comes and tells him, look, me, I'm going to run my own small party, but I'm going to tell my people to vote for you for president. But he hapa mashinani to achie. If you're just looking for votes, that becomes okay, fine. Right. But now what he's actually done is forcing a situation where, look, you're either in our party or don't say, we're going to come and fight you. So you can't be having your own small party on the side and saying that you're voting for me. Because if you're not voting for me, I will run people under my party in your constituency, and I will campaign for them, and I will say you're not one of us.
Perhaps
that's what he has said. So it's a very interesting thing. The second thing was that 37-minute speech. I listened to it very, very attentively. One of the things that was interesting, that the president gave a history of where we are and why we are here as a country. How we have tried on several occasions to come together as a nation, and every time and he gave examples in 1992 when Ford was coming together, and then how just before it actually succeeded, ethnicity broke it apart into small parties. We came together again in 2002, and again we were able to remove KANU, but then immediately after that it broke apart because of ethnicity. 2013 was an effort by this side, and from my understanding of his message was like, look, this is what we should be trying to do. And I completely disagree with those who are thinking we're going back as far as party democracy is concerned. Kenya has 62 parties, political parties. 13 have merged.
Yeah,
we still have like 50 out there, and they're not going to stop. CORD, I don't see CORD ever breaking up and all joining Jubilee. But even if that happened, remember, we have a democratic right to move and join whichever. A party can decide today we are going to move. That's part of democracy. That's part of the space we are growing. So this particular event of Jubilee was interesting for me in that it actually goes against the interests of the president and the deputy president. Right. It just makes it so much harder for him. So I tend to give him benefit of the doubt.
Or at least that's what the people want us to believe.
From actually an independent political analyst position. If I was running for president, I would not be merging parties. In fact, I'd be telling every part of this country, just form your small party and just vote for me.
Well, you're
to force them into one part,
yes.
It's actually harder. It's going to be much harder for him because now he's going to have fallouts during nominations. Even if the nominations are done in the most perfect way, there will be a fallout. That fallout is going to affect his presidential vote. The fact that he insists this is the way to go, and he's telling, and in his message he even said, even my opposition, I'm telling them, look guys, form a party. Let's stop having a situation where Jubilee is a Kikuyu party. I want to have a party where every member of every community in the country is participating. And then the opposition looks like us. So that when we meet, we're not meeting that because we are more Kikuyus than Luos. We are meeting because my issues are more pertinent for Kenya than yours.
Right.
It's a good effort, and I think I really pray that it actually succeeds for him.
All right. He sounds like he really either has internalized the issues in terms of JP, or he's actually part of the team?
I read JP well.
All right.
I read the speech well.
Henry, are you convinced when we hear this issue of bringing a national cohesion and bringing the nation to under one umbrella and all good for the nation, or is it really just success for the president and then his deputy later on?
I read bit of what Ngunjiri writes, and I think in one of his latest write-ups, he's reminded us that Uhuru is a prince, and therefore Uhuru is trying to outdo the legacy of his father. And if you understand that, then you would also understand that Kenyatta one folded up KADU to join KANU, but made it quite hard for the rest of the people who had come from KADU to remain in KANU. So he said, come, we form one nation, but vanquished them and ensured that they didn't have a political voice. How JP is going to ensure that Uhuru does not repeat that by stepping into the exact footsteps of his father is an issue that I want to assess and see more. But I'm asking this question purely on the basis that unlike Kenyatta 1, which had gone through grassroots elections through up, JP is a top-down process. So whether there will be nominations and credible nominations to allow independent minds who affiliate because of ideology to this to vie is still not clear. Right. Because we don't know how the membership of the party and the delegates that were in Kasarani were drawn in the first place. But that the president had said, I think in his visit to Coast Province recently, that those who lose, we will see what to give you. That already tells you that the president is entrenching patronage and what in modern political science would be called neo-patrimonialism. So here we see a president living in 21st century, espousing, saying very good things, which I appreciate. I'm one of the people who wrote a tweet said, great speech, because it makes sense. But when we begin to live the practicalities of what the president says, we always notice he falls short. Why hasn't the president made his government as representative and as diverse today? Yes. What has stopped him? Yeah? Why do we have sections of people still feeling discriminated? Why hasn't the president addressed himself to the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Committee report? Why hasn't he addressed the Ndungu report? If those things were done now, and he said, you know what, I'm having difficulties because of these multi-party dimensions. When we are running in one vehicle, I'll be able to service these issues and finish. I would for sure see that here is a person interested in entrenching democracy, in enhancing diversity, but ensuring that Kenyans are equal so that they all possess the country we call Kenya.
All right, we're running out of time, but this issue of ideologies, either we don't have parties that are based on ideologies or issues, or the media isn't playing its part in helping to promote, and you know, we can't really promote a party, but promote that thought or support to
we have very wrong, I mean, we have given lip service as media to the issue of party. We have very weak party structures, but none of us is, and that's why the part of the reason we are saying we want people to specialize for these elections, to have election desks with journalists who then read and are helped by experts and other team of researchers. So that then we are looking, if who tells us about the manifestos of this party? Most of them is cut and paste of other, and there's nothing. So that people have, the ideology thing you are asking, if we don't have people who follow and read and understand, they won't know the different ideologies we are talking about. So we need media to help Kenyans understand, to put hard questions to these politicians and political parties, to have strong party structures. We can't have strong party structures if journalists continue giving lip service to how they cover party issues.
Right, right. And I'll start now from Ngunjiri coming down. Do you believe that JP or ODM really have ideologies? Because it's behind individuals and tribes. For most
again, I'll go to the speech because we haven't seen what else has happened after the speech. And when you go through that speech, you actually see a certain element of a genuine desire to do things different. And that was actually why the piece that Henry is quoting, which was running today, that's where it came from. Because what I get the feeling of is that the president is trying, he wants that to be his legacy, that I was a president when Kenya changed from doing tribal politics to doing ideological-based politics. And one of the interesting comments he made in Kasarani was when he guaranteed, he said, look, his off-the-cuff remarks as he was finishing, he said, look, I will do everything I can as a leader of JP to defeat CORD. But then, secondly, as the president, I guarantee them the right to do the same wherever they are. It was an interesting concept. He was telling them, look, I am going to come out there and compete with you. And I'm going to come out there and compete with you hard. And that is as JP leader. But then, as president, because that is my current mandate, and that's the constitution I sought to protect, I guarantee you one thing as my opponent, that I will give you, I will ensure you get the opportunity to do the same to me. And what is he saying? I want us to compete. I want us to actually compete. I want you to come and compete with me as I'm competing with you.
In the spirit
that is an interesting, for me, it's the first time I have had a president.
In the spirit of objectivity,
yes.
It seems that you're listening so much.
I mean, that's the only
JP.
speech that was running that day. I didn't hear any speeches from ODM.
Oh, you didn't.
So that was my problem.
It was there. We aired it live.
A speech by.
Do you want?
I didn't see. I did. It is. I mean, for me, I didn't see. But I actually followed. Remember, this is something that has been gathering for like the last 1 month. I've been watching. We have 2 days of watching the parties, and everybody was like, for example, there was PNU that was supposed to fall, it did not fall. Another story that wasn't followed. So you're here, and so that when it came together, and I was like, okay. First, I was very strongly against the whole idea of merging these parties. So I was trying to figure out, are you actually going to pull this off? So you've pulled it off, you've got a message, and then you're trying to explain why you're doing it, and you're saying, look, I want us to compete on ideology. Because when I have a party that has Luos, Kikuyus, Kalenjins, you then cannot come and tell the people in your community to vote for you because they're Kalenjin. So I want you to do the same thing. I want you as my opponent to also have a party that has Kikuyus, Luos, Kalenjins. So that when we compete, we're not competing about how many of us are Kalenjin. We are now forced to compete on issues.
Henry, real quick, and then Dorothy. On issue of ideology, do we have it, or is
I
it
don't
media?
think we have an ideology. I
So the
think
media isn't failing.
the ideology died at the time of KANU merging with KADU. That's as far as our ideological thinking in parties existed. There have been variations. I think from there on, when you look at NAC, PNU, TNA, URP, JP, ODM, as it has metaphors backwards, they tend to all oscillate around social democracy and liberal democracy. So they are already on one side of thinking, that you will not see them ideologically like they are far apart.
Yes.
They are close to each other. One sometimes espouses raw capitalist thinking. Another one sometimes espouses raw socialist thinking, not communist, because at least you know that once you say social democrat and liberal democrat, communist doesn't arise. So I think there is an opportunity for them to be differentiated.
Yes.
But those opportunities for the media lie in asking hard questions on social rights. You know, how, because if you remember President Uhuru Kenyatta as a presidential candidate in 2002 said he can only talk about affordable education and not free education. Kibaki talked about free education, President Uhuru said affordable education. At that moment you would see some differentiation. But then Kibaki was not being asked, how would you raise money for your free education? So we ended at his proclamation, free education. So today, we need to be able, I think this is what journalists could do. If we begin to have specialists in health, in agriculture, in education, and ask the right questions, so that when you say we will have free secondary education, how are you going to raise the money given our deficit today, or given our debt today?
And make that free education worth
what we are paying for.
Right.
So there is an opportunity for growth, but I clearly know that the parties, whichever formation, including TIP-TIP, are tilting towards just these two ideological positions.
All right. Dorothy?
They are sons and daughters of the same.
Yeah.
Most of these politicians have come from the same. So
Yeah.
One and the same thing. Dorothy, finally, real quick.
Yeah. I don't think there is any serious ideology among these parties. And having a look at their manifestos, they are almost the same. And they look very nice when you read them.
Good on paper.
Very good.
Yes.
I wish they could just be implemented. Kenya would be like Singapore now. But they just put them on paper, and then once they are in government, or the opposition.
Yes.
They forget about their manifesto. I think they just gather dust somewhere. They start doing their own things, and they are in another cloud nine, forgetting that we are here to serve the people. We are here to give education. Right now you see children learning under trees, and we have affordable education in some manifestos. We are seeing
Should really put them in check.
our products from the farm, either rotting in the farm or the farmers are left on their own. And yet we have these very, very nice manifestos that have come up, but then putting them in practice or implementing them is a problem. I don't know where policymakers are after the government, these parties form government.
Well, we can ask about the media and our place in digging them back up and reminding either the opposition or the government on their manifesto to keep their commitments. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A lot needs to go on in terms of conversation in this issue. Not enough time. We've run out of time. But thank you for watching. I'll leave you with Kenya Ajui's perspective of Bahati's gig on Saturday. Many feel he breached protocol. I think he did a good job. Have a good night.
Luck has not been on Bahati's side this week from this performance after he allegedly answered President Uhuru Kenyatta before 2017. Guesswork research indicates that most Kenyans are having a hard time swallowing the hot potato with claims of disrespect to the presidency, but was it really about making the president dance? This is just one of the many instances that the president has loosened up to dancing. Former President Moi himself was a regent in that department. Guesswork has observed dancing was besides the point. The problem was this.
Hapana mzito. Hapana. Mi naambia mama.
Sitting on the president's chair, yet it takes more than Groove Award votes to sit on it. Experts have excused Bahati under the context of spontaneity, add that he hadn't planned for this, probably wasn't even fully prepared for the performance, judging from his pair of trousers, which is believed to have been prepared on short notice. The tailor couldn't finish, so he cut the long story short. Basically, all this display making the president dance could all be just a fashion distraction to divert Kenyans from making fun of his suit. We have researchers working on where this confidence was drawn from, considering his ankles were exposed because his trousers couldn't reach down, and yet he didn't have cold feet. From all this, we conclude that the moral of the story is the president is a multitasker because he cannot dance and still can dance at the same time, and Deputy President Ruto is the Michael Jackson of politics. Hashtag the hustler can dance. Representing the Guesswork fraternity on Press Pass it is the one and only Kenya.